If you have done the disidentification exercise of Assagioli's in part 1 of You, the Confusion of the Ages, you will hopefully have a better idea of who you are. But let me go over again some of the points of that video and add some greater depth. Most people consider themselves to have a body, have emotions, or have a mind. If this is you, who is the person doing the considering? Or who is the person doing the observing? Others believe that they are a body, or a mind, or their emotions. But if that's your belief, who, again, is doing the considering or observing? Can you see that in order to observe anything, you have to step away from it to have a viewpoint? So the question then becomes, who is stepping away to observe? And the answer to that question is me, or I, or, as I'm referring to you are the observer. And if you're thinking of Descartes' I think, therefore I am, think again. Antonio Damasio, in his book Descartes' Error, shows us neuroscientifically that this is incorrect and instead says, I think, therefore I am not. Perhaps stop the video and think about this. However, we don't have to resort to neuroscience to see this. When we think, there's always an observer to our thinking, you. But before we get into this, we have to look at the two major components that hold us or contain this person, you, call you, that of the soul and the personality. Only most people, though, don't recognize their soulfulness and instead see themselves as the personality, which is also called, in psychology, the false self, because it thinks it's you. Whatever you want to call it, it is made up of three areas: the etheric body, the emotional body, and the mind. So keeping it simple, the etheric body is an energy network that permeates our body, pretty much like the nervous system that you might find a poster of in the doctor's office. Only the energy body is far more elaborate. The next is the emotional body, which holds or contains our emotions. They too are an energy, but of a different frequency to that of the etheric body. The majority of the population are controlled by their emotions, and it's likely they are so buried in them that they cannot see that it is a completely different aspect of themselves. We can see this when someone becomes emotional. They can really step back from an emotional upheaval and say to the emotion, enough. So you have emotions. How could you feel them if they were you? As I said, to experience anything, you have to put space between it to view it. Think about it. The trouble is that at this time of our consciousness development, a greater proportion of the population around the world are still controlled by their emotions. If you think about it, it's why we continue to have wars, greed, hate, etc., all part of this mix. Relationships and the associated emotional out-of-controlness is all part of this mix. I had a client once who had been engaged a few months, and at the time of her engagement, she was given a £20,000 engagement ring by her fiancé. While driving with him down the motorway, they got into a huge argument, and in a fit of emotion, she took the ring off and threw it out through the car window. Welcome to the world of the emotional body. Emotions, then, control a large percentage of the population. Look at how people live in the world of fear, and look at how the media manipulates that fear to sell their stuff. And if it isn't fear, it's gossip and scandal, both emotional delicacies. Eleanor Roosevelt summed it up when she said, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people." Just look at the sales figures of those glossy magazines and the newspapers that discuss people, and compare those sales to those that publish ideas, and it's easy to see where people's focus lies. On a more common general level, negative emotional responses blossom when something happens and our dreams are thwarted, even temporarily. Catastrophizing, wailing, screaming, and performing is the order of the moment when something doesn't go right. And yet, a few days later, having remedied the situation, we wonder what the emotional fuss was all about. To change this way of being controlled by the negative emotions, we have to become conscious enough to see what emotions are doing to us when they start to control, and how they cause us to behave. The good news is that we can learn to control our emotions using mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being mindful to what is going on in our emotions and putting our mind in control of them. Mindfulness, is now being usefully employed all over the world in dealing with stress. If you think about it, stress is nothing more than having emotions create catastrophizing situations about what might never happen. So again, out of control emotions are something we can do without. But what about the mind? What is that? Again, it is a separate part of us, also in energy, but again, of a higher frequency. We actually have two minds, the higher mind and the lower mind. The lower mind contains our thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, and again, we have to take control of it. In case you hadn't noticed, it rarely shuts up. And this is what uncontrolled minds do. They don't shut up. In the East, they call this constant chatter from the mind, the monkey mind, because it is like a monkey swinging back and forth in the branches. We also have the higher mind, which focuses on intelligence and pure reason. To give you a better idea of this overall concept, it might be helpful to put this in diagrammatic form. The egg diagram was put together by Roberto Assagioli, a psychiatrist and founder of psychosynthesis, a transpersonal psychotherapy model that has reached most corners of the world. This diagram puts into perspective what we are made up of. The size of each part depends on our consciousness. Number one is our unconscious mind, where our unaware and uncontrolled reactions or behaviors come from thanks to our past experiences. Each day, it's likely we will react from our unconscious mind in many, many ways and be completely unaware of what we did. It is only when someone points out to us what we did that we're able, if we want to take the first steps to moving out of the unconscious mind to where we can be more conscious of it and work on it. Or it might be something we are aware of, but we have no control over it. If you've listened to my video on addictions, you'll notice that most of us have addictions. We might know we have the addiction, but we don't know what it is in the unconscious mind that keeps it activated. It's also the home of our uninspected beliefs and unwanted emotions. Number 2 is the middle conscious or subconscious, where the storage of our learned actions are kept so we don't have to think about them and do them then automatically. For example, driving a car. Number 3 is the superconscious or higher unconscious, is where peak experiences originate from. It contains the awareness of what we may be. Listen to the video entitled Peak Experiences for more. Number 4 is the field of consciousness, the extent of our awareness of being, our consciousness, which will be somewhere on Wilber's et al. Scale of consciousness. As we continue our journey of evolutionary development, this field of consciousness will expand until it fills areas 1, 2, and 3 in lifetimes to come. Number 5 is the I, the conscious self. Number 6 is the higher self, the spark of who we really are. That is the driving force of our evolutionary process, which in our present state of consciousness is beyond our awareness. Number 7 is the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is an aspect of the mind that may influence us, but its memories are not a part of our personal, this lifetime experience, but can unconsciously influence us in the way we feel, think, and behave. If you've ever driven through a depressed area and then later felt depressed yourself, it's possible that those depressive feelings from that area have entered from the collective unconscious and impinged on you. So the etheric body, the emotions, and the mind make up the personality or the false self. But here's something to think about. Are you ready for this? Our personality changes each lifetime. So if this lifetime you might have had as your basic drive to be a professional golfer, or a businessman or woman, or a church minister, next lifetime will be something completely different. How else could we move up to the higher reaches of the scale of conscious development unless we experienced every possible avenue of being? Anyway, I think I'll leave you to think about this. Thanks for watching.